this memory that I've been thinking about today. And it's funny because when when my DM first went on his parallel journey to mine, one of the first things he did when he got a little more settled in the house was he started unpacking stuff and started going through all these things that I'd given him. And that's part of one of my love languages. I'm a gift giver. I really like doing it. And one of the things that he pulled out, I for one, I knew he still had it somewhere, or had them somewhere, but I didn't really realize how much it meant to him. Is he had these burned CDs. Now, I know most of you are well aware of what CDs are. It's so funny. I just had a conversation with my 9-year-old the other day, and he didn't know what cassettes were or CDs were, and it was really funny because my dad had given him an old cassette player with a radio on it. I'm like, how much do you know? And in any case, so when I met my DM, I was still a teenager, and I'm an 80s baby, and like really, you'd think I do love 90s stuff, but I really love stuff in the 80s. I especially love like 80s romantic comedies and things like that, and I really loved, like Ferris Bueller, or is it Ferris Bueller? I don't know, where he's out there with the 80s boombox, and there's so many different references, and I'd always like wanted to have a kind of dynamic with somebody that I could be like corny, cutesy, romantic like that. And I still remember it didn't feel right with just about anybody. I tried. I did. With my heart, I tried so hard to be corny and romantic and do the love notes, check yes, check no, all that stuff. It never really took with anybody. And when I met my DM, he was older than me. And it was funny because I never really felt this energy of like, oh, he's an adult. Like, I actually felt like because I was a lot more mature for my age and he was a little more immature for his age, and we kind of met in the middle. But I could sense this, childlike, playful energy off of him. And so I tested the waters with a few different things. And after that worked, I really let myself play in the deliciousness of that, like 80s movie vibe, corny love shit to do. And at my house, we had just gotten a new computer a few years ago, and my aunts got a CD burner, which was it wasn't a brand new thing at the time, but it was definitely the first amongst my friends to have one. And I had I think I want to say we had gotten it a little before I met my DM, so I was already playing with it. I was already aware of how to use it and how to make music with it because one of my friends he had shown me when Napster was still a thing and before it was a big virus thing, and shown me how to put music on and get it on there and things like that. And so when I knew that my DM, he wouldn't outrightly at the time say how delicious he found that sort of stuff. He did later, and it became a sweetness between us that, you do these just sweet things with me that nobody else does, and they're things that I would have wanted to do, and I did try to do them, and it definitely, because we had started out very trying to be no strings attached, I know that it was already unexpected coming from me, and also just, I don't know, I suppose today I'm really in love with my own energy, so I recognize just how delicious that is coming from me. And we had already had this really big connection through music. It was growing, but it was definitely a big thing. It was significant between us in a way that it wasn't with others. And he would share so many stories about the music connections he had with his mom and his dad, which is where the love really was for him in there. And so I was thinking about all the music that would just be so nice on a CD for him. And then also kind of, I don't know, I've always looked at playlists and albums that they kind of tell a story, and they share feelings. If someone shares a song with you, really listen to it, listen to the lyrics and the sound of the bass and the bass drum and the guitar, and how do they speak to you in each element. And I loved that I could share that with him, that he would know that, and it was very intuitive. We hadn't talked that in depth about it at the time, but we both knew it was there, and I took a risk, especially because he was still, I'd say, devil card chained to a karmic marriage at the time. So I didn't want to overburden him with like a bunch of evidence of stuff. I was in an energy of very much just enjoying each connection I had with each person and kind of trying to tell myself it wasn't what it felt like it was with him. Like there's no way I could be serious. Like, don't do that. But I couldn't help myself either. It was just there was no reason not to at the time. I didn't have quite as many ego layers as I went through years later, and but I was like, I'm gonna take the risk, and I'm gonna give him one, and I gave him one, and it had just some beautiful stuff. He'd introduced me to Ben Harper, so I put some of that on there, and India Arie, and then I put on some like Mario, like Won't You Braid My Hair, Nike's Fresh Out the Box. I'm pretty sure I put some Madonna on there too, maybe Like a Virgin, and a couple other songs like that. It was very like I know there's some Keith Sweat songs on there and some J Lo, and just it was very woo you, feeling you. Some Genuine on there too. And when he liked that, like he didn't, he's not an overt like he's a feeling type, not necessarily a verbal type. He can be the other, but typically he feels things, and I just could tell by what little he did say and by the energy he gave off that he really thought that was super, super sweet. And so I gave him one more, I think a couple of months later. He was like, oh, okay, this went well, and I want to do a second one. I didn't want to overdo it, so I didn't do any more than that. I just gave him the two. And I kind of assumed because of the way that others had interacted that they would just be cute for a minute and they'd get tossed out, or because I didn't want evidence or anything like that. And when we got into union, about 4.5, 5 years later, he had showed me that he still had them, and that was such a thing in my heart. It's like, oh my gosh, see, like, and going through all the ins and outs and the separation time of that, and ghosting, and just not knowing where things were. There was commitment was up in the air, and we were both holding masks about whether or not we wanted more on that. I really had convinced myself that it was just me, that I was feeling all these feelings very unreciprocated. There was no way that he could be feeling the same thing. I mean, think about all the stereotypes in the movies too, and like, he's got someone else, or just going through a rough patch. I was just a thing in the middle. And then to see that he kept those CDs, that was like, wow, like it meant as much to you as it meant to me, and I didn't even know that, and I didn't leave any expectation on it having to mean that much, even though it's sad that it feels like it might not be. And so then when the separation started, and that was one of the first things he pulled out. I love that that was kind of a go-to thing. It was really a connecting thing, and most importantly, it reconnected him with himself. I know he's starting to come into that awareness now, that a lot of that stuff, it felt like a reconnection with me, and I felt that too, to a degree, but it was really a reconnection with him. And I know he knows in his 5D self and is coming into that 3D awareness that that is part of what the important connection is between us. That I don't, like, yeah, there's times I get 3D. I try to lead him to me because I'm like, look at me. I didn't, you should come and be with me. But mostly what I've always done and what I enjoy doing consciously is bringing him back to himself. And how the universe leads that. I don't pre-plan out how to do this stuff. That's just kind of my overall intention that I have. And I love seeing through the history of these things and the story of us that I've done that. I've always done that. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I was just following my intuition and my instincts and just enjoying the deliciousness of that energy. And it's so great to look back on that now and see that and know that he's coming into seeing that in his own way and time and pace and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I'm going to leave this memory here, and I hope you enjoy.